Chatima Tova to all of you. A good and happy and healthy year. One that will bring us all satisfaction and accomplishment and good tidings. It's very difficult to give a lecture on tshuva because it's an amorphous subject. Everybody has their own sort of tshuva. And the concept of tshuva itself is not easily given to definition. We find in the Talmud, for instance, the Talmud mentions in Kiddushin that if a man marries a woman on the condition that he is a righteous person, Al-Manas Shani Tzadi Gomer. Tzadi Gomer is a completely righteous person. So the Talmud says that there's room to say that the marriage is valid, even if, let us say, he did not have such a sterling reputation until now. Because of the fact that the Talmud says, Shema hirer b'tshuva. Maybe at that moment, in his heart and in his mind, he really wanted to be a supremely righteous person. He wanted to repent for everything that he had done incorrectly, and now he wanted to be this supremely righteous person. So we see that tshuva is, the Rambam laid down rules. You have to regret what happened, you have to accept for the future, you have to make certain that you won't do it again, etc., etc. Those are technical rules. But the concept of tshuva, which applies to all of us, and not only during this week, but applies to us all of our lives, is somehow to return to ourselves, to return to our spiritual nature, to return to the God of Israel, to return to be a positive, productive person. And that naturally translates itself in our actions, in our behavior, in how we think of things, and what kind of presence we have in our home, in our business, in our community, generally in the world. How do we see ourselves? So I want to discuss with you, we have in the Torah a mention of something called Vidui Maaser. It's in the Parsha of Ki Tavo, in Chumash Dvorim. Vidui Maaser, once every 3 years, the Jew was obligated to take the tithe, the Maaser, the Trumos, everything that he had in his house that he should have given away, and to take it outside and to give it to those that were entitled to receive it. But it's not sufficient to do the act alone. It's an interesting thing in Judaism that the act alone, as important as it is, has to have with it verbalization, so to speak. That's why we make a blessing on everything. Why do I need the blessing? Why do I have to say it? If I have a piece of bread, I know that the Lord gave me the piece of bread. He brought grain from the ground. Why do I have to make a bracha? Why do I have to make the blessing? Because the verbalization is essential to the act of holiness that I'm about to do. So tshuva is a verbalization. That's why on Yom Kippur we will say vidui 9 times. We'll confess our sins. Isn't it enough for me to think? I say, well, I'm not going to do that anymore. I say it to myself. Why do I have to say it publicly? Why do I have to acknowledge it? The answer is because that's the process of tshuva. That's the process of the catharsis that takes place within us, which leads us to a better place. So in the Vidui Maaser that we have, I want to review it for you, if I may. since you tuned in, then I may, right? The Torah says, Ki sechalel ha'aser es kol maaser tvuoscho bashono ha'shlishis shnas ha'maaser. When you come to do this great act of charity, to give away something that you have, we all know that it's not easy to do so. We all know that by nature we are born acquisitive. We're born with clenched fists. It's all mine. And now I take it out of the house and I give it away. V'nosato lager lalevi lager layosom v'lalmono. I give it to those who are dependent upon me. The Lord created always people that would be dependent upon others. In fact, we're born that way, right? I was in Africa, I saw an elephant being born. So the elephant fell from its mother's womb. The fall broke the umbilical cord, but the elephant weighed 60 pounds or 80 pounds, the baby. And in 3 minutes, it's up on its feet and it's walking. The human being is not like that. We're born dependent. We're helpless. Only our parents can take care of us. And sometimes that is not only a question of a few years, sometimes it's decades. And in a greater sense, it's a lifetime that we're dependent. So the Levi, the Ger, the Yatom, the stranger, the widow, the orphan, the people who are dependent, right? They have to be helped. So my first confession, my first step in the process of tshuva is to realize that there are people who need help and that I somehow have to help them, even though I don't know them. I may not even like them. They may not fit my paradigm of how people should be. But the Torah doesn't may give us those choices. The Torah binds us in a very strange way. The one who is dependent, the one who helps the one who is dependent, are both bound together. And the Talmud in its famous phrase says, more than what the wealthy man does for the poor man does for the wealthy man. And that's the beginning of tshuva, is the realization that I am dependent upon others and others are dependent upon me. I don't live in a vacuum. It's not ani v'afsiod, me and no one else. The Torah doesn't recognize that. The Torah doesn't allow us to think in those terms. So the first step in tshuva is to see ourselves as part of the whole. And then we see ourselves as part of the Jewish people. Now the Jewish people are a difficult people. And there are lots of Jews that I don't agree with. And that I really, to put it mildly, don't agree with. So do I have a responsibility to them? I saw a wonderful idea expressed by a great Hasidic Rebbe. You know, only a Misnagid can really portray a Hasidic idea correctly. Yaakov Avinu, on his deathbed, comes to bless all of his children. And he extends to them a blessing. But he singles out some of his children for their shortcomings. The first three, Reuven, Shimon, and Levi, So Reuven, he had a personal incident with, of disrespect to the father. But then there's a strange posuk. The posuk says, Shimon v'Levi achim. Shimon and Levi are brothers. We know they're brothers. You know, all the tribes are brothers. So the simple explanation is they're brothers because they're like-minded. And then he goes on to criticize them. They're people of violence. I don't want to be associated with them. I decry their violent nature. I criticize them for it. So why does it say again, Shimon v'Levi achim heim? And that's, so to speak, in spite of what I'm going to say, because all the tribes are gathered there. All the brothers are there listening. It's not individually. He said, Hikovtsu v'shimu, gathered together and listen to what I have to say. So all of the other 10 brothers are there. So he wanted to tell them, even if I criticize Shimon and Levi, even if they are violent people, even if they have done what is wrong, achim heim, they're your brothers. You have responsibility to them. And therefore he said, I will scatter them amongst the Jewish people, but you'll have to take care of them. You have to take care of the Levi. Shimon represented the teachers of Israel, Rashi, the Gemara says. And those are not professions that, so to speak, bring in a lot of income. So you have to take care of them. But I don't like them. They're not like me. They don't agree with my ideas. And they do a lot of things that are wrong. So Yaakov said, Shimon v'Levi achim heim, they're your brothers. Achalkem b'Yaakov, afitzem b'Yisrael, I'll divide them up amongst you. I'll scatter them amongst you. And you'll have to take care of them. Because you have a responsibility to them. Even if they are not what they're supposed to be. And that's very hard. I think that's the hardest part of tshuva. I think, I don't know how to put it nicely. I think tshuva between the Jewish people and God is much easier. First of all, God is merciful. Second of all, God we don't see, and it's an abstract idea to us. And we have prescribed rules. You know, so I have to, for instance, I have to sit in the sukkah. I have to take an esrog and lulav. Fine. The esrog never did anything to me. The lulav never did anything to me. The sukkah never objected to me. I have no animus towards them. But my neighbor, who is a pain in the neck, who is always disturbing me, who has wild ideas, and does things that I think are harmful. It's harder for me to do tshuva and have a relationship with him. It's harder for me to be able somehow to see achim heim, that he's my brother. And so therefore the Torah begins the vidui maser. The beginning of the process of tshuva is Lalevi, Lager, Layosom, Lalmona, to those that are dependent upon me. I have responsibilities to others, even if they are not what I feel they should be. And that is a very, very difficult tshuva to accomplish. There was a time in the Jewish world when there was great emphasis placed upon that. And the anecdote that's told, I have no proof in the matter, but I was told it by my teachers in the yeshiva long ago, is that there were 2 Jewish communists in Brisk, Brest-Litovsk, where Chaim Soloveitchik was the Rav, and They were arrested because they were communists. They were arrested by the Tsarist police, and they were held in jail, and they were going to be shipped off to Siberia, perhaps even to death. And Reb Chaim was informed that the police that were holding them could somehow be bribed to release them, to allow them to escape. Now here you have two communists. They're not believers in anything. They're not shomrei mitzvahs. They're not going to come to your shul. They're not going to send their children to your yeshiva. But the story is that it was Kol Nidre night, and Reb Chaim mounted the podium, and he said everyone should go home and bring money on Yom Kippur. And when we collect enough money, then we'll begin the services. And everyone went home on Yom Kippur and brought back money, and they put the money together, and they got the two Jewish communists out of prison. And then he said, now we can daven for Yom Kippur. Now that's an extreme story, because maybe in the greater scheme of things, we should have gotten rid of those communists who would later inflict so much trouble on the Jewish people. But the story is illustrative of what Yom Kippur stands for. That's why Yom Kippur doesn't forgive between people. Yom Kippur is between us and God. So then there's even an opinion in Rabbi Meir in the Gemara that you don't even have to do tshuva. Tshuva shel yom mechaper. You just go through Yom Kippur. God will erase it. But God will somehow work it out. You can't work it out with people. The obligations with people are not that simple. And therefore, one has to have this type of an attitude to be able somehow to deal with it. And that's the beginning of tshuva, the most difficult part of the tshuva. In the Vidui Maaser, the man says, V'amarti lifnei Hashem Elokecha, I will say to God what I did. Bi'arti HaKodesh min habayis. I took the holiness and I took it out of the house. Out of the house means that wherever I went, I was a holy person. They saw it was Kodesh. One of the great tragedies of the Jewish world over the last 2 centuries, that was the slogan, Yehei Yehudi b'veisecha, ve'odam b'tzeisecha. In your house, you can be as Jewish as you want. But outside, you're like everybody else. That's what it was in Western Europe. That's what it was under the secularism. And it didn't work. Because if you weren't a Jew outside, then you weren't a Jew inside either. So, Bi'arti HaKodesh min habayis, I took my holiness and I took it out of the house so that it was apparent to all. In my business, in my relationships with people, everything was based on Kodesh. Everything was based on what is correct, what the Torah wants from me. It was not hidden. The assertiveness of being a Jew. Now, we recognize as being Jewish, even those that run away from it. It always happens. It always catches up to us and bites us. So the question is, which way? Tshuva is always Kiddush Hashem. It's always doing the right thing. No matter how painful it may be, no matter how expensive it may be. And therefore, part of the confession, part of the vidui, part of the commitment, part of tshuva is bi'arti HaKodesh min habayis. It wasn't only in the house. It wasn't only at my Shabbos table that I'm a Jew. I'm a Jew wherever I am. I'm a representative of Torah. I'm the bearer of a great heritage. I have a role in the world. I cannot shirk it. We see in the famous Haftorah of the Novi Yonah that we'll read in the afternoon of Yom Kippur, Yonah doesn't want to save Nineveh. He's disappointed that God does. He doesn't want it. He hires a ship, they take him away. I don't want to do it. And the Lord forces him, as the Lord forces all of us. I think in our time it's clear, there were people that thought that if we have a state, then we can escape the stigma of being Jewish. But that hasn't happened. The state only makes us more Jewish. And Jews everywhere. The greatest anti-Zionist in the world is stuck because of the state of Israel. Can't escape it. And anyone who thinks that somehow they're not talking to them makes a tragic, tragic error, has not learned the terrible lessons of the 20th century. So, Biarti HaKodesh min habayis. I've taken holiness out of the house. Wherever I go, I try to spread it. V'gam nesati v'lalevi v'lager v'layosom v'lalmona. Again, the Torah emphasizes again, I have helped those who are dependent upon me. I have not tried to escape. Here in Israel, I'm sure it's everywhere in the Jewish world. In the morning, in Shachris, in the shul that I daven in, I have the honor of being the Mored Asra. So there are 15, 20 people every morning that come in and ask for money. And they ask it inopportune times. And to a certain extent, it's annoying. I'm trying to daven. I'm trying to pray. I'm trying to have an instant of kavanah, which is not easy to happen, right? We all know the struggle it is to have meaningful prayer. We can probably count on the fingers of both hands the amount of times in the year that we felt that we had meaningful prayer. And here this guy comes and he sticks his hand in front of my nose. I'm trying to say Shema, and he's So I once asked a great man here in Israel what he thought about it. So he said to me, I'm surprised. He said, he didn't say it as directly as I'm putting it, but he said, but I'm surprised. I thought you were a Talmud Chacham. I thought you were a Ben Torah. I thought you knew something. He said, Avraham Avinu is having a conversation with God. Vayero elov Hashem be'ilonei mamrei.
Hello? Hello?
Excuse me for that. So Avraham Avinu was having a conversation with God, which is the ultimate prayer, right? The ultimate davening. Vayero elov Hashem. God appears to him. He's in communication with him. What would we give for such a moment? And he sees 3 Bedouin Arabs. And he invites them into the house and he says to God, so to speak, I'll call you later. I'm going to take care of these 3 guys first. So you see that what? That's our responsibility. That's why we're the children of Avraham Avinu. So if a man comes and he sticks his hand in front of me in the middle of my prayer, so to speak, I have to say to God, I'll call you later. I got to give this guy half a shekel. I have to somehow take care of him. That's a Jewish thought. Part of we don't like to be disturbed, to have bad decorum in the synagogue and other moments of solemnity. But there are priorities. And human beings are our priority. They're the first priority that we have. In our family, because we're distantly related with the Netziv of Volozhin, Naftali Tzvi Berlin, his nephew, the Torah Tmima, records that somebody once sent a carpet as a gift to the Netziv. Now, the Netziv did not live in in a split ranch or in a Georgian mansion. But in Volozhin, you had a carpet, so they put it over the floor. I don't remember whether he said it was a dirt floor or a wooden floor. One day, a poor man came to the house, and the street was muddy. It was not paved, and his boots were full of mud. And he came in and he stood on the carpet, and the mud sank into the carpet. And one of the people in the house said to the poor man, "Would you mind getting off the carpet? You're ruining the carpet." And the Netziv overheard that statement. And when the man left after whatever they needed, it was taken care of, the Netziv ordered that they roll up the carpet and not use it anymore, because he said, when a carpet is more important than the feelings of a human being, I don't want it. So again, those are the priorities in life. God, he didn't say I prayed to you well. He said I gave to the Levi, to the stranger, to the orphan, to the widow, to those who are dependent. And God, I tried to do all the mitzvahs that you have commanded me to do. Sometimes we look to avoid a mitzvah. I would say in my years as a rabbinate, more people have come to ask me how they could get out of doing something than how they could get into doing something. Is it all right if I don't do this? But the mitzvahs are an opportunity for self-improvement. That's the whole idea. And because of that, therefore, our gateway to tshuva is to try and do more mitzvahs, not less. And to try and do them correctly. Kachol mitzvah, the whole mitzvah. Not just a piece of the mitzvah. A whole mitzvah. So, again, tshuva allows us to look at mitzvahs in that light, in that fashion, to see it as something noble and not just as an obligation. Now, part of the problem in our education of children, which is a very difficult task, complicated by school, by all sorts of pressures and social ideas and everything. But part of the problem is that the child, the school, the student sees it as an obligation, does not see it as an opportunity. I can only say from my own life, I don't take myself as an example of anything, but at least in my own life, when I misbehaved as a child, I know it's hard for you to believe that I ever misbehaved as a child. But when I misbehaved as a child, my father's punishment to me was that he would not learn with me that day. I would come crying to my mother, Daddy doesn't want to learn Gemara with me today. I would have been 6, 7, 8 years old. That was the punishment. So therefore, I always thought that learning Gemara was an opportunity, was a reward, because if not learning Gemara was a punishment. I would want to do all the mitzvahs that you told me. I see it as an opportunity. I see it as a gift from you. That's why when on a mitzvah that occurs over time, so we make the bracha shechiyonu v'kimonu v'giyonu l'zman hazeh. I thank you, God, that I'm alive to do it. If it would be an obligation. I mean, nobody made a shechiyonu on paying their income tax on April 15th. So that's an obligation. Mitzvah is not an obligation. And therefore I want to do it kechol mitzvos. I want the whole thing. How it affects everyone. And so that also is part of tshuva. And then the man states, Lo avarti mi mitzvosecha. I did not transgress. I didn't purposely do something that I knew was wrong, that I was told not to do, and I went ahead and did it anyway. Now, we all have inner drives, we all have desires, we all have temptations. But God, I tried, I wouldn't do it. I would not purposely transgress over what you told me to do. And then he says, V'lo shachachti, I didn't forget you. We say in davening of Rosh Hashanah, Ashrei ish shelo yishkachecha. Who is the fortunate person in the world? Shelo yishkachecha, that I didn't forget you. That wherever I went, I remember there's a God in the world. If people remember there's a God in the world, they behave differently. It's only forgetfulness that allows us to do terrible things. That allows us, God forbid, to commit criminal acts, to be dishonest. And I need not elaborate on that point. We suffer from that sufficiently. It's only because I forgot that there's a God in the world. Famous story that I always tell about Rabbi Rosenberg, that when he was offered a bribe, he said, he didn't answer the man. When Rabbi Rosenberg was head of the OU, the man wanted a certification and a whole thing, and Rosenberg just sat like this and didn't say anything, and then when it was all over, the man kept on raising the amount that he was going to give. Rosenberg said to him, and what does God say to this conversation? He said to him in Yiddish, "Was sagt Gott?" What does God say to this conversation? If we would only remember those few words, Vozot Gott, what does God say? We would spare ourselves an enormous amount of aggravation, pain, embarrassment, suffering. What did God say to it? So the man says in his moment of vidui here, Lo shachachti, I didn't forget. I never forgot you. Ashrei shelo yishkachecha. Happy is the person that says, I didn't forget you. And we all know that forgetting is, God forbid, the worst of punishments. Something that we all dread. So that also is the door to tshuva. Lo achalti v'honi mimenu. I did not live in this world in sadness. A Jew by nature is optimistic, because otherwise we would never have survived all the terrible things that happened to us. Yivdu es Hashem b'simcha. We are bidden to be of good spirit. But only is in sadness and grief. We all suffer tragedies in life. It's impossible. And as the Lord grants us longer lives, the possibility of tragedies only increases. But that I didn't allow it to eat me up. I didn't allow it to destroy me. The resilience of the Jewish people is tshuva. Other people would have long since given up. A remarkable thing, we just went through a war here. We had 3,000 rockets fall on us, etc. Nobody left. Nobody picked up and said, we're going. Let's move to Santa Clara. The resilience of the Jewish people. And we also say in the Vidui Maser, Lo viharti mimenu b'tomei. I did not waste my resources on things that are impure, that have no value. There are billions and billions of dollars of Jewish money given every year to things that are of no value, that are of no lasting value, that in fact are inimical to us. To squander our resources b'tomei, to squander our talents on things that are by nature impure and wrong and obscene. And because of that, therefore, again, it's a realization of who I am, the gifts that I've been given, and of the role that I am supposed to fulfill in life. So I try to focus on doing positive things, not to do tumah, but to do tahara. And Chazal teach us, the Talmud teaches us, Abol l'taher b'sayin lo. He who comes to do things to advance concepts of purity, of nobility, of holiness, and heaven will help him. He'll have strength that he never realized. He'll have talents that he never exploited. But you have to want that. You have to want to somehow accomplish all of that. And therefore the man says further, Shomati b'kol Hashem Elokoi. So it's an interesting thing. It doesn't just mean I listened to the voice of God. It means I heard the voice of God. There's a voice that emanates every day, the Talmud tells us, from Sinai. So did anybody here ever hear that voice? I didn't. Because I'm not on the right frequency. In this room are all the sound waves of the world are here in one room. But you've got to have the mechanism to have the right frequency to hear what it says. Shamati, I heard God. Wherever I did in everything. The Talmud teaches us that Hanoch was a shoemaker. Rabbi Salanter says that why was Hanoch such a tzaddik, such a righteous person? So Rabbi Salanter says because he made good shoes. He gave the customer his money's worth. Every stitch was perfect. That's hearing God's voice. So Shamati, I hear God's voice. That's whatever I do, I hear it. We're the only people that have a blessing on our natural functions. What the world hides from, we acknowledge and give thanks to. Because we hear in that God's voice as well. And even in sadness and in tragedy and in difficulty, we hear God's voice and we say a blessing. Because I didn't forget you. I heard your voice. You're with me. Hashem roi lo echsar. Ki ato imodi. You are with me. And a person can have that feeling every moment of his life. He always feels that he's accompanied by something greater than he, something that encourages him. I want to tell you, I've been a rabbi a long time. You can be a rabbi a long time if you start early. And every time that I thought I was going to do something, I was going to have another class, I was going to write a book, I was going to do, I'm going to make Destiny Found it. Every time, anytime, I always had naysayers. We made the yeshiva in Muncie, whatever, built the shul. People came to me, nice, good people, and said, no, can't happen. Don't waste your time. But I always felt that somehow, if you come to do good things, then the Lord will help you. He'll be with you. I knew the Ponevezh Rav very well. And when he passed away, I knew I was close to him in the Ponevezh. He left a debt of $5-6 million to the yeshiva because he was always building, and he always built without money, on credit, etc., etc. He once told me, I thought it was a joke, but he was serious. He said, that's the next generation will have to worry about it. Anyway, so when he died, he owed all that money. The yeshiva owed the money. And I didn't see how the yeshiva would survive. His son, Rabbi Rom Kahneman, Zecher Tzaddik L'Vrocha, took over the daunting task. So I didn't think that he was the equal of his father. His father was a great fundraiser, could take literally blood from a rock. But in a few years, he paid everything off. So once in my boldness, I asked him, I said, can you explain to me what happened there? How did you do this? He said, well, I'll tell you. He said, when my father was alive, I helped him. He worked and I helped him. and now I work and he helps me. Hashem imadi. The Lord is with me, right? So the man in his tshuva lecture says, Shamati b'kol Hashem elokoi, asisi k'chol asher tzivisani. I did what you told me to do. You told me to build Torah, I'm going to build Torah. You told me to have a family, I'm going to have a family. Children are a pain. I'm not going to have a family. I'm going to endure all the hardships of parenthood. I have done what you have told me to do. That's the process of tshuva. Complete process of tshuva. So if a person comes to that level, so then we can say the other half of what we tell God to do. Hash'ifa mimon kodshecho min hashamayim. So God, now you look at us. We're trying. We're not perfect. Can't guarantee anything. But we're trying. We're doing what we can, or what we think we can at least. So you look down upon our efforts. Vorech es amcho es Yisrael. So you bless us, your people, because you have no one else in the world except us. No one else behaves towards you the way we do. Bless Israel, the Jewish people, in the land of Israel, especially the land of Israel. The land that you gave to us. Part of the tshuva is to believe that. We are not conquerors, we're not colonialists, we're not expansionists. The gift of God to us. There was a time when even secular Jews realized that. In 1936, Ben Gurion testified in front of the Peel Commission that was then deciding on the first partition of the land. It was really the second partition. So he said to them, gentlemen, the Bible is our deed to the country. That's the truth. That's our only right there. But it is the ultimate right. It is the one that stands the test of time, the vicissitudes of all politics. As you promised it to our forefathers. You promised it to Avraham, to Yitzchak, to Yaakov. That's the promise. Eretz Zovas Cholav Udvosh, a land that flows with milk and honey. And it does flow with milk and honey. What has occurred here is unimaginable. If they wake up somebody from 100 years ago, wake up somebody from 30 years ago and show them the country, you wouldn't believe it. We think it's supposed to be that way. So God is talking to us. We in turn should talk to him. We should repeat the Vidui Maser. That's our confession. That's our gateway to tshuva. That's how we become better people. And in that sense, as we all try to accomplish that, so then we have a right to ask of him that he should inscribe us all for a good and healthy and productive year, a year of serenity and peace, of accomplishment, of the greatness that lies within all of us. Now, if you'll just excuse me for one more moment, I don't want to insert a commercial note, but I want to mention the Destiny Foundation. We provide educational material, all sorts of things. We're in over 400 schools worldwide already. We're going to have a new film out coming in November that'll be in New York for a premiere. We have books. We also need people. And we have a membership program. We have hundreds of members. The truth is, if we had thousands of members, the program would expand and continue and continue and continue. And it's not dependent on Berel Wein. It speaks for itself. So bear it in mind. You can go to rabbiwine.com and see all the benefits that accrue to the members of Destiny Foundation. I want to thank you all for listening and for coming, and I want to wish you all the Gemar Chasima Tova. We should be Zoche this year to hear good news one from another, and it should be a year of Yeshuas and Achomos, Lanu L'chol Yisrael. Amen.